pressure from the bottom of the program costing more, you have pressure from the top of a lot less money being available, and therefore a program that was thought to be executable in the beginning, we think probably isn't executable with the funds that are available today, with the plan. I would note that we looked at one case where you add money back and exceed the budget guidelines we were given. If you add back about $3 billion a year, the program is executable, and it puts you right back about to where you were when the program began.
Can you explain the scoring system that we spent the last couple of hours on? How much of an impact is that going to have on the final recommendations of the panel? It sounds like it's almost a mathematical process.
We spent a great deal of time trying to decide what would be important parameters to evaluate any given option against. And the scoring system then is a way of kind of relatively comparing the pros and cons of each option under each of those measures of merit. How you put that all together into a decision, yes or no, or we do this option or that option, depends on the weighting that you assign, of course, to each of those parameters. And we have chosen not to try to assign weightings because we think that only the person who has to make the decision can assign that weighting. It includes how important is holding the cost down, how important is going to Mars early or not going to Mars at all, how important are all these different measures. And that'll be a judgment issue, I think. In the end, it'll have to be made by the president and the administrator of NASA, not by us.
So you can't just add up the numbers?
Oh, no, you can't add up the numbers for sure. They're just relative comparisons.
This is a really basic question, but it is 4 or 7 options.
Folks, we got plenty of time. Let's just go around here. Let's ask one question.
You have plenty of time. Speak for yourself.
He's bringing in dinner.
Okay. So we don't talk over each other and everybody can hear.
Sure.
This is sort of semantics, but are you referring to this as 4 or 7 options? And whatever that number is that the number that you expect to be in the final report?
Yeah, it gets a little bit confusing, but where we wound up today really was that we'll have 4 basic options, but there are other baseline comparators that we're not going to call options. And those were things like what's the present program and what's our adjusted view of the present program and things like that.
Could you briefly just say those 4 options?
Oh, I'm not going to try that. I'm sorry at this point, but you know they include such things as what do you do with the space station? What do you go to deep space or not? Do you continue to try to pursue the existing program except with the resources that are appropriate, and so on. But it pretty well covers the whole spectrum of possibilities. Mm-hmm. And then we have other options that we'll probably just discuss in words.
And do you expect those same 4 to be in the final report? Is there any way that any change can be made between now and the final
If
report?
we learn something that's remarkably new, we could change it, but if we do, we'll have another public meeting to change it.
It seemed today, though, that you signaled that you're going to discard the Mars Direct flight and essentially focus on deep space being kind of the new, more visionary thing. Is that a fair thing to say? And can you tell me why?
I think that's fair, and I think the reason is that we think Mars Direct is a mission that we're really not prepared to take on technically or financially, and that it would not likely succeed. And so we will discuss Mars Direct, but we won't include it as one of our numbered options. And we very much like the deep space option, or I'm not promoting it, but as a doable, viable option. We think that technically, economically, and in terms of the rewards it produces, it's a reasonable step on the way to Mars. So I really want to emphasize we're not giving up on Mars at all. We're just saying that we think to go direct Mars with today's technology and money is riskier than we would want to be associated with.
Yeah, I know you don't want to name the 4 options, but I do think for those of us who aren't as deeply into this that sometimes the shorthanding made it kind of confusing. But at least to me, it seemed like there were a variety of deep space options using different vehicles on the table. There were some reference scenarios that were basically the plan as it is now, either with a little more money or at the current budget. And I mean, does that pretty much fairly like sum up sort of the options you're still considering?
I think so. I should emphasize that those options are basically markers because there's so many variables, and there are other derivatives of those options that somebody might choose to pursue, and that we will discuss. And so when I say there's four, I mean they're derivatives of each of those, and so don't get too hung up on the number four, but it's more like four than it was 14, I think, this morning or yesterday.
Did anybody we missed so far not get a question yet that would like to ask one? If not, we'll do one quick round and then we'll call it a night.
Skip me for a second, I'll come right back.
I've been to a lot of meetings in Washington, and this seemed unusual in the sense that it was the kind of deliberation that normally takes place behind closed doors rather than in a public forum. I know you're coming out of the corporate sector, but what was this like as an event to have this kind of meeting in public on television?
Well, it's a great question. The FACA rules, I can't remember what FACA stands for, but it has to do with transparency in government, is interpreted by NASA's lawyers are that any deliberations like this have to be conducted in public. And certainly in the corporate world, you wouldn't do this. I don't want to say anything other than that I believe in transparency of government. I don't think decisions should be made in a closed room. On the other hand, to go through this level of detail in public is something that absolutely escapes me, but I don't make the rules, I follow them.
Just for information, that is the Federal Advisory Committee Act that we're working under, and it's very much in the sunshine.
Yep. If NASA does not see an increase of funding, which is something that you guys seem to be recommended today, what hope do you see for human spaceflight in the next 2 decades?
I think it would be fair to say that our view is that it will be difficult with the current budget to do anything that's terribly inspiring in the human spaceflight area. On the other hand, there are important things one can do to prepare for human spaceflight and for important achievements. It's just that they won't come as soon.
Yeah, just quickly, it seems like only one of these options that you've boiled down to today keeps Ares 1 in the mix. For all these people out there trying to read the tea leaves and figure out what's going to happen with that, how does the future look for Ares 1, do you think?
Yeah, I would say that there's one option that has Ares 1 in it, and that's a marker. And so there's just as good a chance the decision maker would choose that option as any other option, depending on what their weighting was, of the figures of merit. So I wouldn't exclude anything at this point that's in those options. And of course, the president and the administrator have the right to choose an option we didn't even offer up. Or they may choose to take pieces of several of our options and combine them.
Okay, Tracy?
Thanks. Were you surprised to find that absolutely no exploration options fit under the current budget profile? Did you think that one of them would if you looked hard enough?
I did think that one of the current options would fit under the present funding budget, and I thought it might be quite a while before you really got into space to do those exciting things that we're talking about. But the budget has been cut so much since the program started, and the program has had some difficulties as well, that I guess I should have realized that perhaps it wasn't possible. I certainly didn't think we'd miss by as much as it did. And I should say again, we've been fairly realistic, conservative, if you will. The financial figures you've seen are at a 65% confidence, which a 50% confidence would mean there was as much chance that it'd be higher as would be lower. This is 65% chance that it will be no higher than the numbers we're looking at. So they are a bit conservative, but we're, I think, convinced that one of the things that's troubled NASA the most in recent years is having objectives that they don't have money, resources to match, and we don't want to contribute to that. So I think we're telling it like it is.
Any other questions before we wrap up?
Just a simple question on the deadline. I know you have until the end of this month. Do you have a general idea when you think it might come out publicly?
Actually, that's going to really depend on the White House. We will be giving a briefing this Friday to the folks over there, and that's being advertised as a preliminary output, if you will, because we still have, as I said, 20% of our time, our 90 days remaining, and so we'll be continuing to work, but I don't think we'll be doing anything dramatically different in terms of content. We've also got a report to write, and our goal is to have that report done by the 31st of the month to go to the printer. And how long it takes from the printer to hard copy, I don't know. I think the plan is to put it on the internet as well when it's available on the web. But when it really is made public is a call for the White House. I really don't know.
Okay. Will you meet with on Friday?
We'll be meeting with the folks at the Office of Management and Budget, Office of Science and Technology Policy, and the leadership of NASA.
Okay.
Can I ask how you feel about the just
Final question.
how quickly this report has come together? I mean, do you feel like you really have had adequate time to assess this? Because it seems like you all are on kind of a mad sprint, or at least that's how it seemed today.
I've probably been involved in 100 studies in my career for the government, different departments, and I have never seen a group work as hard as this group has. It really has been demanding. It's pretty well eaten up our summers. And could we have had done more with more than 90 days? Obviously, we could have. On the other hand, one of the things that keyed the timing of the study of the 90 days is that they want to get the results to impact the budget cycle, and the budget cycle is fixed. So if we missed that, we were looking at a year and 90 days. And I guess I would also emphasize that we're not trying to do things to the fourth significant figure. We're trying to do relative merit. And also, we didn't start as individuals on day zero. Most of us have spent our lives in this sort of thing and have a pretty good sense of what things cost and what's dangerous and what you can do and what the technology is. So I think we came with a huge head start, and I think for the purpose of what we've been asked to do, yes, it's been a tough 90 days, but I think a tough 81 days, 71 days so far. But I think it's not inappropriate.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, and that'll wrap it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.